Hey everyone, welcome to the video. My name is J Rod Plays YT. I'm sure you've watched my videos before. If you're returning, if not, welcome. This is the first time that I've put through a voiceover video. Normally I put text on the screen, but in this case I figure since I've already got a similar video out on Macrocosm and the other encounters, I'm going to go a little bit more in detail on the master version since it's a little bit more difficult. It's closer to the day one difficulty, which a lot of people are saying is not as difficult, but again, those people usually have teams, they're in raids all the time. This video is not for that crowd, the people who are always raiding, who have a set team. This video is for people who are newer to the game or don't really have a set team and they're kind of LFGing, so you're really on your own. You never really know what you're going to get when you're working with an LFG team. You can get a bunch of great players that are of similar skill, they just roll through things, or you get a couple good players and then you have to pretty much carry your teammates or take time and be patient with them and teach them because they're new to the game or they just don't have a lot of time to do research and watch videos like this, for example, to understand the strategies that are going to make the difference and get you the win. So for people who are you know they show up on your video and they watch like a minute and a half of it and they're like, oh, just get good, or they'll put their very original comment of skill issue, get good. Those people, this is not the video for you. You know what you're doing already. You can go ahead and click off the video. This is for people who are actually trying to figure out what to do better, how to do better, how to get to the end goal of conquering these encounters in the Rudenheimer raid, and who are just looking for some tips and tricks to help and make it easier for them, easier for their teammates. Maybe you do have a squad, but you're just trying to figure out, like, what are we doing wrong? This is the video for you. So without further ado, I'm going to get into a little bit of the details, specifically when it comes to the changes from the normal mode and master mode. So in master mode, of course, Bungie's idea of difficulty change is to throw more champions at you or throw champions at you in places where they weren't before. When it comes to the Macrocosm encounter, it's going to replace the normal Colossus with barrier champions. They're not that difficult if you have the right loadout, but my experience in this encounter, trying to do master, was that not everybody was either willing to run the loadout because they were worried about their damage, or they just didn't have the items that I had, because I play the game decent amount, and so I pretty much have every gun. I've got it leveled up. I'm prepared usually before I even click on an LFG. That's not the case for everybody. That's more rare than not that you get people who are actually prepared and everything is of light. Normally you've got a few people you have to kind of either let them get to the tower, let them get an upgrade module, get their gear together so that they can actually contribute to the raid and contribute to the team. So in my case, I was running a Izanagi's Burden. The Izanagi's Burden is a strong choice because the anti-barriers spawn in specific places, and you can prepare for them by standing in a way in which you can either shoot them in the head when they land or shoot them in their crit spot on the back. And if you do so, and you do so, for example, like an empowering rift like I was doing, or you have some type of buff at the time, you can usually one-shot them. If you don't one-shot them, then you can usually move up, punch them, and then finish them. Of course, there is some risk in that because Destiny, for whatever reason, has a coding issue where you do a bunch of damage at one time. It'll rubber band health on the target, and the target will get their health back, and then they lose their health. But by that time, the barrier is already stomping you and one-shotting you in some cases, especially when you're doing master mode or day one content. Their stomp can one-shot, which is a problem. So you want to make sure that you know your kit. For me, for example, I specifically had a mod that allowed me to get an overshield whenever I was doing the finish. So even if I was a little bit damaged and I was maybe on the verge of death, if I got my finish in, I could survive any attacks from the scions that were surrounding the anti-barrier, and then clean up the scions, move on, and get to my side quickly. Which is another issue in the Macrocosm encounter, is getting to your side quickly enough and either getting back safely or getting to a point where you know the routes to take, that you're not going to put yourself in as much danger so that you can help your team. Because if you're dying all the time, if you're on the ground all the time, you're going to put your teammates at risk. You're going to add that additional stress to your group of having to rescue you and then get to the damage phase so that you can actually do damage and not lose time on the plates, which was a big deal in my LFGs the other night. When the footage you're seeing here was people dying, and that was on day one as well. People dying in their respective corners. For whatever reason, the people on the top left and the top right, meaning the side closest to the boss, those people were struggling on day one, and the same people were struggling in Master. They just had a hard time trying to figure out the proper route to get side to side quickly, and also just get their anti-barriers killed, because the benefit of being at the bottom is that you usually have two ad clear people kind of already around you, so they had a habit will turn and shoot the barrier with you. Whereas if you're in the corners, you're kind of on your own. So I had to actually take that spot so that I could minimize the amount of uh, failure that we had when it came to killing the anti-barriers. I would kill my anti-barrier quickly, and if I needed to, I would check down on the guy below me, help him kill his anti-barrier without taking it, obviously, and get my planet, and then take off from there. When it comes to the planets, of course, we'll go over here in another section the specific planet callouts, because it always changes based on the team. I try to keep it to where it's a 1 through 6, with 2 and 5 being on the wall. And I have a diagram that I'll post in the description so you can kind of see where everything is laid out. It's just going to be a text diagram, nothing specific. There is a link to the Raid Secrets that I'll also be posting so that you can go to the Raid Secrets forum and see the actual diagrams people put out. People do a lot of great work on day one, and that same work will apply to the Master mode. Now I'm going to very quickly get into the mechanics of the fight, because the mechanics themselves are fairly simple. It's the execution of the mechanics and the way in which you execute the mechanics that really cost people a lot of time and a lot of effort. That usually ruins a lot of runs, is just straight execution. The most difficult thing I think people find themselves doing here in Master Mode is staying alive, especially with the 4-plate people with their anti-barrier. For some reason, with LFGs, it is just so hard for them to deal with their barrier because they're so focused on their loadout, and the loadout is not going to be conducive to killing quickly an anti-barrier and then moving on. They're like, oh, it's going to hurt my damage. And then my argument, of course, is, well, you can't do damage to the boss if you're dead before the boss damage phase begins. So the most important thing is getting the mechanics down and then getting into the boss damage phase reliably and just executing perfectly. Even if you have to do those 3 passes, just get there, because if you're dying before that, if you're not running loadouts that are going to make it to where you can survive, if you're not running classes that are going to make it to where you survive, you're really going to have a hard time in any day one encounter, or in this case in any master mode, because it's just all about execution with this particular raid, which was one of my favorite things about the raid, is that it didn't really have a big boss health check issue to deal with. It was mostly mechanics. The older raids were more, boss health pools and doing damage efficiently in a specific time, and that was your execution. Now you execute the mechanics, and the boss health isn't that big of a deal, especially when you're doing master mode. You really have to take advantage of the burns. We had a lot of people switch up their loadouts so that they were using solar damage, solar rockets in this case, because there's not any good strand DPS other than the grenade launcher, and we're just not there yet with strands. So we were doing solar, and it really makes a big difference. It really does, because it's very forgiving. You get a lot of damage in a short period of time in those plates that you were having that short period of time in, and that makes all the difference. So a quick recap from my other video on Macrocosm in normal mode on the mechanics. You have your 6 planets, 1 through 6. We like to order them planet number 1 being the closest to you, planet number 6 being the farthest, and then we go based on distance from the door, from the entrance. So 2 and 5 are against the wall, so you would see 1, 2 against the wall, 3, 4 is actually next to 3, 5 is against the wall, and then 6 is the farthest. So those are the way that we set up the plates. And then you have your 2 sides. You have your light side and your dark side. Dark side being on the right, light side being on the left. These are important because you're trying to line up all of the colors for the same sides, meaning you're going to make sure that every planet on the left, when you're done lining planets up, is light, and every planet on the right is dark. So let's say you're on the right side, on the dark side. Whenever you get planetary shift and it kicks in, which you get by killing the Colossus in this case, you will start to see a little small globe glowing below the planet, And once you see that globe and you look around, you're going to realize a bunch of dark planets, but there's going to be only 2 light planets. So those 2 light planets that stand out, let's give an example being position number 2 and position number 5, both of the ones against the wall. Those would be the 2 planets that you would switch with the other side. The other side is going to do the exact same thing on the light side. The light side is going to look for the dark planets that stand out, and they're going to grab those dark planets and they're going to try to deposit them in positions where you call out from your side. In this case, you were 2 and 5. So for simplicity's sake, let's say the other side is also 2 and 5. They're going to grab their planets 2 and 5. They're going to call out to you their number. You're going to echo your number back, so it would sound like, I have 2, I also have 2. They're going to run to your position where you grabbed your planet from, and they're going to click on the little globe below, and that's going to come up with a little planetary alignment interact. You click on that, you're going to hear like kind of like an eagle sound, signifying that you were able to get that deposited. Make sure you stay there long enough. The game will 99% you a lot of times, meaning that you go to deposit and you don't actually get a real deposit, and then you're running away and you still have the buff, and then your planetary shift timer will expire, and then you're screwed. You have to start over again. Speaking of the planetary shift, there is a little blue bar there on the corner that will start up either once somebody grabs their first planet or automatically after a certain amount of timer, and that will begin the planetary shift. You have until that timer expires to get your deposit done on both sides. So you have to have a pickup and deposit and then a corresponding pickup and deposit to confirm on both sides, or the planet won't fully switch. Once you've done that, you'll see the planets begin to rearrange. If you do it correctly, you're going to get a glow around all the planets, and you'll hear like an audio cue. That audio cue will let you know that you've done it correctly, and there will also be text at the bottom letting you know that you've done that correctly. If you don't get that audio cue and you don't see all the planets kind of light up, then you know that somebody somewhere missed the deposit, didn't deposit appropriately, or called out the wrong number, which even I do. As I've gotten used to running, that's pretty much what I do in this encounter. I will oftentimes use my peripheral vision to see the planet, and sometimes I'm switching sides. Some people like to stay on their side once you've switched, and then you have to switch in your mind what the planet is. That happens. If that happens, so be it. Start over. It's not a very long encounter. Just make sure that you're keeping that to a minimum. I personally like to switch back to my original spot so that the next time around I'm looking for the color planet that I need to look for that corresponded with my original. But if you are adept at this and you have people that you can trust, you can stay on their side, and then you're looking for the opposite color planet when it comes time to deposit. Now, once you've done those 4 alignments, 2 on the bottom, 2 on the top, that's going to move you into a additional planet phase. That planet phase is going to show you these 3 planets in the center being either light or dark, and there's going to be 2 of one color and 1 of another. So to simplify it, let's say there is a dark in the middle and a light on the left and right between the 3 plates. That means that the 2 people from the light side have to execute. They have to stay alive. They can't die, because both of them will need to deposit 1 on the left and 1 on the right in the plates in the middle, the 3 damage plates. And the person on the dark side, they have a little bit more leeway. They can actually only have 1 person deposit that center one, so if somebody dies, the other person can pick it up just fine. And if you're quick, of course, you can actually have, I think, 1 person grab both and do the deposits. But it's really tough, again, in LFGs and in Master Mode. There's not a lot of forgiveness. So try to make sure that if you're the side that's got the 2 on there, and of course you know this because when you kill the Colossus that will spawn, you're going to kill another set of 4 Colossuses. And then from there, you'll have the ability to get planetary insight again. You're going to be the first person that gets that kill, to call out where the 2 are, where they need to be deposited, and how many of each you need. So that way people kind of can already start to plan the route out and get to the right place. So that's pretty much the entire planetary shift, planetary insight phase. From there, you're going to go into the damage phase. Once you get into the damage phase, what's going to happen is the 3 plates are going to glow. You're going to pick a DPS rotation based on the planets. So in our prior example, we had a light on the left and right and a dark in the middle. How that would look like, it's going to start on a light planet because there's 2 of the light planets. So we would say mostly start on the left plate, move to the middle dark plate because it's always going to alternate in color, and then move to the light plate on the right. So that's going to be left, middle, right. And the person with the well, the first warlock, usually you've got a couple of warlocks. In our case, I think we had 4. We actually had 3 that were assigned. that first warlock, it's important to go get down your well early. You don't have to worry about too much the timing, because the boss will come down and you'll have a very short amount of time on the plate in the first place. So in this case, everybody was getting pelted by the ads on the side. We didn't really have very good ad clear. People were kind of dying, trying to wait for the boss to be ready for DPS instead of just killing the ads. They were kind of just hiding, probably because they were already low health. So if you drop the well a little bit early, that's fine. That way you can get in there, get your damage in, and everybody's alive, because that's the biggest goal. Is when you're running with LFGs, when you're learning the fight, being alive for the damage phase is more important than having high DPS, because you can have high DPS and then you're the one that dies. You're gone for 2 plates because people don't res you. It doesn't matter. What matters is execution in these fights. You're going to get in there, you're going to do your damage. You're probably going to have your 3 phases anyways if you're LFGing. It's very rare to get into a good LFG. Either you have enough damage across all of the 6 people that you're going to 2-phase him, taking advantage of the burns and everything is possible, right? Some people can 1-phase him, but it's going to be rare on an LFG. And then again, is the focus of the video is what is it like for an LFG person or somebody who just doesn't have a crew that they run with regularly. A quick note on the boss. One thing that's important, especially on Master Mode, whenever you get the boss down to his final stand, he's actually kind of beefy still, because you're going to be out of ammo. You're only going to have your special or your grenades, things like that, your supers. You're going to want to make sure that when you hit those plates, again, you can damage him from any of the 3 plates, so it's not really that important where you stand. And if your well is gone, you want to make sure that you're not all clumped up too much, because the tornado will come right to you. We had one of our runs ended, unfortunately, because a tornado just spawned right on top of us and killed 5 out of the 6 of us when we were on his last stand. So it's important when you get into the last stand, if you're with a new group, that you kind of stand off to the side, hit your plate, and get your damage started, and kind of get away from everybody so that you're not getting hit by the tornado, the fire tornado that he'll spawn, and you'll be able to sit there and finish the boss while a couple of people are probably going to be dead from that tornado. So that's one more quick note, is to really look out for that fire tornado, because that can end your run, and it is frustrating once you've finally got everybody on the same page and you've got finally 2 strong planetary alignments done, and then you're about to kill the boss and you die to a fire tornado. So that's one quick note just to keep an eye on, and you'll see footage here in the background of it. I'll kind of loop it so that way you can see the pain that we dealt with. One of the biggest things that you can do, like I mentioned before, is staying alive and doing whatever you can to stay alive. So for example, here in this clip, you're going to see me taking out the barrier. Once I take out the barrier, then I clear up the scions so that when the person comes across, they're not getting pelted by the scions. And from there, I will look to see which route is the safest to cut across. A lot of players will like to cut across this back flat platform. The problem with that is that as you're jumping down, usually a bunch of ads are going to spawn, and they're all going to target you because you're going to be the closest to them, and that's usually a surefire way to get yourself killed in a bad spot, especially when you're right by the boss. I always kind of get annoyed when somebody dies underneath the boss or right around the boss, because there was really no reason for them to be there in the first place. There's no good reason in the first part of the encounter during planetary shift for you to even be next to the boss. So a route that you'll see me take here in a second is going down to the right toward the bottom person, cutting across where there's not a whole lot of scions. I may kill 1 or 2 scions as I cut across. I may also have to use my abilities to stun or kill scions that are kind of waiting for me to jump up on the far right plate, or the far right section, where 4 through 6, planets 4 through 6 are located on the other side. I will do that, get my deposit, and then if I'm low health, I'll hide behind a pillar, or I will begin shooting the scions and trying to use my abilities to get my health back. You can run mods that will allow you to pick up your health when it comes to orbs. Of course, I run resistance for solar in this fight, double solar resistance. That'll help out quite a bit. A lot of times you'll get targeted by the boss as you're cutting across, and he'll put fire where you're about to land. You'll kind of have to stand in the fire to actually do the planetary deposit. You have to be able to survive that. So the biggest thing is to find a safe route side to side, hit the route quickly. Even at one point, somebody mentions how fast I was, because I have my route kind of pre-planned out before I decide to run across. And just not die. Do whatever you can to make sure that you're clearing your own path, because you really can't count, if you're in an LFG, on somebody to do that for you. You have to be able to clear your own path, find ways to create survivability, pick the class that does that the most for you, especially if you're trying to get master done, because there's not a real reason for you to be farming master. Master drops just armor, unless you're looking for a specific piece of armor that you're not getting. Like if you just can't get the chest piece and you want the chest piece, for example, which is my case, I can understand farming master. But in this case, the way the Bungie's designed master mode, they have made it to where you get in, you get your challenge done, and then you just go complete the rest of the raid on normal. And that's the optimal way, the most efficient way to get that done. Because once you get master done, you've already completed it for guardian ranks, you've already gotten your ship. You can't do any more of the challenges to get the other triumph done. So in this case, you get your master out of the way, get your challenge, and then you move on and you just do normal, so that you can go back to getting red borders again, because having every single encounter drop armor was a terrible decision, since you can't actually get red borders from master. You can only get the one locked gun. In this case, the sidearm was this week, the first week of Master. So you can only get 3 sidearms, one per character, and you're not going to be able to get any more of that. And of course, they're not dropping with double drops, they're only dropping with single drops, which hopefully will be fixed in a later patch. Kind of like how they did for the shotgun whenever they brought back the Mindbender's Ambition. That particular shotgun was bugged, and they did fix it, but really couldn't save that. So they're kind of in the same position here. So the goal is to just to get your master completion usually, and then move on. Now that I've gone over the pathing, the next thing we're going to talk about is going to be killing the champion quickly. And also trying to coordinate with your teammates too. You'll see in a second that I'm jumping up to the platform. I barely got my scions killed, and all of a sudden there is a anti-barrier spawning that I was not prepared for. I wasn't reloaded. Thankfully, I was able to get my shot off, but there were instances where I just quite couldn't hit the crit spot because he turned as I was finding him, or again, his health rubber band, and now he is full health again, and I'm vulnerable, and I gotta hide, which again is part of survival. You hide behind the pillar, play Ring Around the Rosie with him, do whatever you have to do so that you stay alive and your teammates have a chance to survive alongside you. As you can see, a few of my teammates got killed just by the ads, so I was able to get over, get the revive, and get back into place, and get to the plate that I needed to get to, which, by the way, if you happen to die and you're next to the plate and you still have your planetary, you can dunk it. That was one thing that was a big deal. We saved a couple of our runs like that, where people died next to the plate, got rezzed, and then got the dunk in before the wipe mechanic started, so we could start damage to the boss. Now, when it comes to the plates, one thing that's important is the plates themselves are going to light up once you get into the damage phase. You don't want to touch the plate early. You want to get there, but you don't want to be there so early that your teammates are like 2 or 3 seconds behind you, because if that's the case, those teammates are going to have a really short plate. They're going to lose heavy hitting damage. You'll see a few of my rockets go into the boss and hit his immune, and that's a lot of DPS loss, especially with the Wolfpack rounds. It also throws off your rhythm, because you're expecting to have that damage give you your grenade back. In my case, since I was running Starfire, so you do want to make sure that you're waiting to step in. You run right next to it, about to touch it. Once everybody starts running in, you get in there. If you're the Warlock, for example, and you're dropping your well, drop the well just to the side of the plate, so that way people can actually get into the plate. Another thing that a lot of people may not know is that you can touch the plate and then go pretty much anywhere in the encounter and do damage at that point. So you don't actually have to be stacked, especially if you're like rocketing yourself and you're having people with issues spacing. So that way you're not blowing each other up. You just pretty much touch the plate, run to a spot that you feel safe that's still within the well, dump all your heavy, and move on. Another thing that's important in Master is that people like myself even tend to save heavy ammo for the third plate. To be honest, we weren't getting a lot of time on the third plate, so the better thing to do was to dump all of your ammo in the first 2 plates the best you can, and if you got some extra time in the third plate, great, use your abilities, use your special, but it just made more sense to just get as much ammo in on that first 2 plates so that you can actually get in there and do as much DPS in that short period of time, the 2 ideal plates that you get. A real quick overview of the build as well, just in case anybody decides that they want to run the same build. I was doing the Starfire Protocol Warlock build that everybody does. My specific build accounts for getting grenade energy back just in case I mess up on my well, and I actually had to alter this build a little bit for the encounter, just because of the need to put out more damage to make up for some of my teammates' lack of damage. I ended up going with 3 solar weapon surges at one point, so that I get as much rocket damage in as possible. I also traded out my kinetic siphon for a scout, a heavy ammo scout mod. In this case, I was running harmonic siphon because I had a solar weapon at the time. I was using the BXR with demolitionist enhanced and enhanced incandescent to bring down the ads. So that was helping me get grenade energy back, and that was also helpful whenever I ran out of ammo on my rocket launcher. I was able to still kind of spam damage to get back my grenades, and I wasn't using Witherhoard, of course. I think there was somebody else using Witherhoard, so I decided still to stick with the Izanagi's Burden, so that way I could take down the champs, and that was the biggest difference there. I ran in my artifact, Solar Surge, to get the Fire Sprite. That was giving me armor charges for my grenade kickstart. I also had Flare Up in here from another build. You can substitute these out for things that you may need, like the mods, for example. I had Solar Mods only costing 1 energy because I chose the Solar Mod perk in my artifact. And actually, I'll just kind of bring that up here. I had the grenade mods, I had multi-siphon mod in case I needed it, and I had solar mods. I was also using Medieval Champion during the encounters to stun the Unstoppables, and I had a pulse anti-barrier that was helping my BXR break the shields of the anti-barriers in case I happened to not hit my Izanagi shot and I had to kill them with grenades. I was also using Bricks from Beyond in some of the other encounters as well, and you'll see that in a few of the, I think the opening 2 encounters. But that's pretty much the build that I went with for most of the encounters. I did go Strand in the second encounter, which is Scission, the first actual encounter, to help control the ads, but for the most part I was on this build throughout the raid to kill Nezarec for MACROCOSM. It was a much stronger build when it came to damage, and specifically you could see kind of the stats that I focused on. I was trying to get my resilience as high as possible, my discipline as high as possible, and my recovery was my third stat. I was fortunately also able, because of the artifice armor, to get that up to 92 as well, and of course with my aspects. I had Ember of Torches to get Radiant. That would also help break the shields. I had Ember of Wonder, just in case I got ignitions with my grenades. And then I also had the Ember of Searing to get the fire sprites. A lot of targets were dying from Scorch because of the incandescent. It also helped with the recovery of the stats. Of course, this also helps with discipline. And then Ember of Resolve was big. A lot of times, run through large crowds, I would throw a grenade just to get health back as I was clearing those ads, kind of moving through from side to side. I was running the Touch of Flame with the Icarus Dash. Some other encounters I did switch to the Heat Rises, but that was only when I was doing Scission, jumping back and forth. And then, of course, you got your Fusion Grenade and your Empowering Rift, and that's pretty much the build. And those are my thoughts on the Macrocosm encounter of the Master Raid. I'll be making a video as well for Scission and for Nezarec. The jumping puzzle in between is pretty much the same. There's no major differences there, so really no need to make an additional video on that. As far as the Nezarec goes, there is some slight changes that are going to make it a little bit more difficult. And of course, it's an LFG, so there's a lot of things that make it a little bit more difficult. But thanks for watching to the end of the video. I really appreciate you guys. My subscribers, they've been a good motivator for me to continue making content on this particular video, especially the response I got from my Nezarec video on how to control Nezarec and how to keep him in place for your team, that I was able to post on the raid secrets on the day 1 raid. That got a lot of traction and hopefully helped a lot of people actually finish their day 1 or day 2 and get their emblem. If you have any questions that I didn't cover, something that your team is running into that you just maybe can't figure out, go ahead and leave them in the comments and I'll get to them as I can. There's plenty of questions that maybe come along that are along the same subject line, maybe something I didn't cover. I can maybe make a short follow-up video to cover those specifically and give some visuals as well. But other than that, thanks very much again. I appreciate you guys. Leave me a like if this video helped your team, and I'll see you guys in the next one.